Certainly in the last 2 years when I really got into triathlon, and I suddenly realised that even with work, you know, because I work in costume and you get offered a job and you're terrified because you might not have worked with that person before and you don't know if they think your work's any good and you don't know what kind of work you're going to be doing or what hours you're going to be doing, and it's quite scary and you just have to go for it, otherwise you won't go anywhere. So you just have to pretend to be a braver person than you are. And I definitely think that, you know, doing that with triathlon, like I'm scared to swim in open water. I should do it then. Or I'm scared to do a half distance. Oh, well, I should do it then. Yeah. And then when you've done it and you realize that fear that, oh, I can do that has gone, then, but it hurt. Well, maybe I could do it and it doesn't hurt. Or maybe I can do it and I enjoy it more because I know that I can do it now. And that feels great. You just got to keep going.
That's age grouper Jessie Hassall, and you're listening to Age Group Stories, brought to you by the Oxygenaddict Triathlon Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Oxygenaddict Triathlon Podcast. We're brought to you every week by our sponsors, precisionhydration.com. Electrolytes in different strengths that match how you sweat. You can get 15% off your first order with the code Oxygenaddict15. You can also book a free hydration call with them. There's a link in the show notes. Mention you've heard it via the Oxygenaddict Triathlon Podcast, and you're entered to win a £50 Precision Hydration bundle, which is awesome. I'll tell you what else is awesome. We've got a fantastic interview today with Age Group Story with Jessie Hassall, who's one of our Team Oxygenaddict athletes, recently raced Outlaw X. Jessie is, well, she's just a little legend, really. You might have seen her if you raced Outlaw X. She was the one who had pink hair and the most ridiculously bright fluorescent coloured tri-suit. She's just full of laughter and fun, and I think you're going to love the interview with her. She's got tons of wisdom, and I came away from the interview more inspired to go and train than I was when I went in, so I really hope that it has the same effect on you as well. All right, but before we go to that later on, we're going to kick off with some news and results. That's sponsored by Precision Hydration. Now, I've just mentioned you can book a free hydration call with their experts. There's a link in the show notes. Mention you heard it via us, and you're entered to win a £50 Precision Hydration bundle. They will talk you through a training strategy for hydration, a racing strategy for hydration, because they're not always the same. If you haven't taken their online sweat test yet, it's dead simple. Go to their website, answer a few questions, and it'll give you a really good lead as to whether you're a very heavy or very salty sweater. The reason this is important is, especially training in winter, you need to keep on top of your electrolytes in order to stay hydrated. It's not as simple as just drinking water. You need the right concentration of electrolytes in the water in order to match how you sweat. Now, for some people, it's not that important, and their electrolyte levels, they don't change that much when they sweat. For people like me, for people who get lots of cramps when they're riding, cramps in the night, or if you feel really sick and weird when you're racing in really, really hot weather, that's a really good sign that your electrolytes are probably either really strong, really concentrated in the sweat that comes out, or that you're a very, very heavy volume sweater and you've really got to take care of that. And I've got literally dozens of anecdotes from people who are either heavy sweaters or very salty sweaters for whom Precision Hydration's electrolytes have literally been a game changer. It's like a key that unlocks their performance. So if you're struggling at the moment, if you're struggling with cramps on the turbo or the treadmill, or even in the pool when you're pushing off the wall, if you're lucky enough to be able to get swimming at the moment, check it out over at precisionhydration.com. You can get 15% off your first order with the code Oxygenaddict15. All right, so some race results from this weekend. Christian Blumenfeld of Norway and Mathilde Gauthier of France took top honours. They both won at the ETU Sprint Triathlon European Cup in Barcelona this Sunday just gone. Christian came into transition with Javier Gomez and ran away from him over 5K, put 15 seconds into him over 5K. So he's still continuing to be in storming form. And Gustav Iden rounding out the top three there as well. So the three of them in great shape going forwards towards the PTO Championships out at Challenge Daytona. Over on the women's side, like I said, the win was taken by Mathilde Gauthier, Fernanda Contreras of Spain, and Michelle Filippo of Mexico. Okay, other things that we've seen that have gone on over the last week or so. I'm sure some of you have seen this in the press. Lionel Sanders had a crack at the Canadian hour record on the track. With very, very little track riding experience. He didn't grow up riding on the track. He's had a few goes over the past couple of weeks, riding a borrowed bike. he recorded 51.3 kilometres, which added 2.8k onto the Canadian record. I believe, and I'm not 100% sure about this, but I've read this somewhere, that he went further than Jens Vogt when he broke the record. So it's just an amazing performance if that's true. It shows how talented the guy is on the bike, especially riding a borrowed bike and being on the track for what's, virtually the first time in his life. He's in storming form as well, clearly ahead of the championship out in Daytona. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how he goes. Now, talking about the PTO Championship all the way out in Daytona, that's going to be coming up. The last round of wildcards has been announced. And there's good news again for Great Britain. So we've had Lucy Hall and Simone Mitchell both announced on the ladies' side. Chris Lieferman and James Kanama have been selected over on the men's side. So Lucy Hall, no surprises, she's been racing really well recently. She had a great race at Triathlon Outlaw X a few weeks ago. Unfortunately, she went detoured on the bike and she got a bit lost. She was miles ahead out the swim because she's a really, really strong swimmer. She took the 2014 Mixed Relay Triathlon World Championship. She was 2015 European Under-23 champion. So she's got major form. And she also raced at the 2012 Olympic Games back in London. You'll remember seeing her just really drilling the front of the race, led out of the water there. So she's an amazing talent, and she's still only 28. So pretty amazing that she's been around. It feels like she's been around forever. And now she's moving over to middle distance races. She's had second place at 70.3 Ireland at Dunleary, and fourth place is Ironman 70.3 Lanzarote and Ironman 70.3 Middle East in Bahrain. So so she's had some good races here. I'd be very interested to see how she does out in Daytona. She's odds on to be right at the front of the race in the swim, and see if she can get into a pack with Lucy Charles Barkley and who knows who else. That could be her ticket to, if they work together legally, to get dragged away from everybody else. So she could really be one of the players who shapes how that race goes. Obviously, Simone Mitchell, we've had on the show a couple of times. She won Ironman Wales last year in 2019. That was her massive breakthrough performance. She also had a storming performance the year before at Full Outlaw when she broke the course record and finished fourth overall amongst the men. She was an absolute machine that day. She was running like a Terminator. I remember her coming the other direction and cheering her on. She was so focused. She was totally in the zone. I think she's also been overall 70.3 age group champion, and possibly also, I think she's won her age group in Kona. She might have been the overall champion in Kona as well. So she's got massive potential over that distance. She had the same foot injury that had affected, who was it? Holly Lawrence, that's who it was, Holly Lawrence. And they both had that same broken bone, navicular bone in the foot, which is interesting because it's a very rare injury. So the fact that two such top athletes have had it. Anyway, she's recovered from that and is back in cracking form. So it's great to see her get a wild card for the race. The other two wild cards over on the men's side, Lieferman's had a couple of wins at Ironman distance. He won, I think, Louisville and Boulder. And he went pretty fast in Boulder. He was close to 8 hours in Boulder. And then I think he's also had a top 10 finish at Kona in 2019. And obviously James Kanama, he's been around a long time. He's been racing at the very top level for a long time. And he's had a couple of top 10 finishes at Kona and won, dozens and dozens and dozens of races. He won Challenge Roth, he won Alpe d'Huez. I think he won Ironman France as well. So he's a real quality competitor, and it'd be great to see him there as well. So it'd be great to see how that all plays out. We've only got, I think we've got about 5 weeks to go. It's the start of December, the championship race. So yeah, we will see how it goes. It was great also to see that Nikki Bartlett's been given an entry into the race. It wasn't a PTO wildcard, but she's been given an entry by the organisers. So they're going to have another 6 or 8 entries announced as well. So it'll be interesting to see who else gets an invite. I don't think Kat Rye's on the start line from what I've seen. It'd be great to see her get a chance because she was, she had a stonking battle with Nikki Bartlett and actually ran away from her at Outlaw X recently. So it'd be great to see her get a start as well. So watch this space. The race is I'm going to say it's going to be televised. It says on their website there's going to be a global television presence. There's a link that you can click. I'll stick it in the show notes to sign up to be told about what's going to happen. I know this because one of the listeners emailed me and he said, do you know where I'm going to be able to watch it? So I emailed the PTO and they wrote back to say, we've got some news coming. Register here at this link and you'll be the first to know what's going on. So they've got something planned in terms of us being able to watch it live. And it's going to be great. It's going to be the biggest race of the year for sure. So God willing, if it actually happens, let's, fingers crossed. So yeah, go to the show notes and click that link if you want to be notified of that. A couple more things before we finish. If you're a bike geek like I am, you'll be having all kinds of excitement at the moment. You'll have seen the new Scott Plasma has been released. Eye-wateringly expensive. I think the top model is something like 15,000 quid, and the cheaper model, in inverted commas, I think is about 10 grand as well. But it's absolutely stunning. They've got hydration and gel bottles and stuff hidden all over the place. It's really clever how they've managed to do it, and it looks really integrated and really aero. And the front end bars on this bike and the one I'm going to talk about as well, they're moving over to a kind of slidey up and down mono stem kind of deal. It looks really aerodynamic, really integrated. All the brake cables and gear cables go down the inside, so there's nothing sticking out in the wind. So that's the Scott Plasma. And the rumors are that the new Canyon Speed Max disc brake version is going to be announced almost any day from what we've heard. So I was going to say Lionel then, not Lionel. Jan Frodeno on his Instagram a few days ago posted a picture of him riding head on the bike. So you can't see any of the details other than there's what very definitely looks like the disc brake caliper down at the bottom of the front forks. And it very definitely is a mono stem riser front end on it as well. So I can't wait to see what this thing looks like. It's obviously being teased. There was another video he showed on his Instagram where he was in some kind of aircraft hangar, and as the camera goes past, and this is how much of a geek I am, you can freeze frame it and you can see the bike just very not clearly in the background. So that's going to be coming soon. We're all desperate to know. Obviously Canyon are always been great on the prices, so let's see how they come out. But yes, it's an exciting time for new bikes. God, I love New Bike Day. I really love it. It's fantastic. All right, well, that's enough excitement over new bikes. Let's go over to this week's interview of the week. It's an age group special with Jessie Hassall. Jess, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Lovely to have you with us. You're sitting here. I'm very impressed with the wet hair, having just come from an open water swim. That's a great start to a Sunday, isn't it?
It was a bit of a party, so I had to go.
Temperature-wise, how was it in, what are we now, October the 20-something?
It was fresh.
Very
refreshing. 10.5 degrees, I think it was, but I'm not sure I believe the temperature.
Did it feel colder? Yeah. 10.5 sounds not that cold because you go outside with a coat on and the air temperature's that, and it feels okay, but anything under 12, in my experience, feels like it's pretty much meltwater running off a glacier.
I definitely, yeah. It's when it enters the hole in your wetsuit and you get that sharp intake.
Yes, absolutely.
Not so pleasant.
All right, so I wanted to get you on the show. You are one of our most fun and interesting athletes, and certainly the only one who's powered by unicorns. So
definitely
wanted to hear the story. A lot of people will have seen you if they either raced Outlaw X or if they saw the video of Outlaw X. You were wearing possibly the brightest coloured tri-suit known to man, and you had your hair dyed pink. So that's an interesting place to start, powered by unicorns, isn't it?
Definitely. Yeah, I think happiness watts are definitely a thing.
Happiness watts?
Yeah, you've got your happiness watts. They sometimes are greater than aero benefit.
Interesting. Go on, tell us about happiness watts then. This might be something you can actually patent.
Well, so before, when I started cycling, I just felt like I needed to embrace this unicorn power. So I stuck a horn on my helmet just for a laugh, and I stuck little ears on it as well. And I did the Ride 100, And it was great because you see kids cheering and they're like, yeah. And every time they cheer, you're like, yes, I can go faster. I can do another mile. And it was just from there, really. Every time I went for a run, I was like, oh, I've got to have handy unicorn horn. Slap that on my head. Suddenly I can run faster, you know. And I joined a club and near me. And I went out for a ride and I had just the ears left because I take the horn off. You know, in public, it's a little bit weird.
Yeah.
The unicorn. So I had little ears. Everyone thinks I'm Batman. And there was a cycle coach at my club and he was like, oh, the you've got ears on your head. And I was like, yeah, they're, unicorn power, And he said, oh, they're happiness watts. They're definitely a thing,
I love it.
I've never heard of happiness watts. What are they? He's like, oh, they make you go faster for sure.
Well, Chrissy Wellington used to have the same theory, didn't she? Her whole Twitter account's called Chrissy Smiles because she would smile whenever it hurt more. She would smile more. That was her.
Definitely, I think it works for sure. When you're in your darkest place, if you just slap a smile on your face, and other people see you as well, and they smile back, then you just go, don't you?
Well, we were just talking about this, weren't we, before we started recording, this idea that you don't necessarily have to pummel your body into submission with the force of your will. You can kind of access another, and I think a lot of us grow up thinking that that's the case. You've got to grimace to make yourself go faster, but actually maybe there's another way. If you watch the Olympic athletes, very rarely do you see them looking anything other than extremely relaxed. And I, as a kid, used to watch like Seb Cohen, Steve Cram, and think, they're just not trying as hard as me, because like on videos, my head would be rolling and I'd be grimacing. And it was years and years later when someone said to me, do you think that maybe they've trained themselves to look like that because it makes them just a little bit more efficient? I was like, oh, yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, definitely. I think when I started running, it was pretty grim. But there was definitely hard times when you're training and it hurts and you're like, oh, why am I doing this? And then I suddenly realised that you don't have to destroy yourself to get any benefit. And I think when I've learned that, I suddenly took a step back and oh yeah, it's just for fun. You don't have to take it too seriously. And why are you doing it otherwise? Just have a laugh and go and explore somewhere rather than, oh, I have to do a 4-mile run. What am I going to do? Just have a laugh. Go find a tree that's interesting. I don't know. Go find a statue.
So, right, let's go back a little bit then. How many years are you into your triathlon journey, would you say, at the moment? When was Ride 100? When was that?
So Ride 100 was in 2015.
Okay.
And I kind of did it by accident because before that, I wasn't interested in anything like that. My cousin did the Ride 100 in 2014 and he died, sadly. He had a cardiac event. And so it was quite a shock, and his partner was cycling with him, and she set up a group. His name was Chris Cook, and we wanted to get his bike over the finish line to complete it. So the next year, a group of us, we all went out and we did the Ride 100. And I'd done the London to Brighton when I was 17 maybe, and it's just like when you're that young, it's like, oh yeah, I'll do that, it'll be fine. But 100 miles, I thought, wow, it's 100 miles, and I've got to prepare for that. So my husband and my dad, we went out every weekend and we did our version of training that was just like going to a National Trust place that was slightly further away from the house and then coming back again. And it was hard. It was tough because I was on a hybrid. I didn't really know about road bikes. So I just got something with suspension so that I could ride over potholes comfortably. And it was so heavy. And I can't believe that I even cycled 100 miles on that now. I don't even know how I did it. And we got his bike over the finish line and it was amazing. And I was dressed as a unicorn and we did a little dance. And then immediately on the high of that, I was like, yeah, I'll do it again next year. So we signed up again, and the training was not as intense because we were like, well, we know we can do it now, so we can chill out. And it was great. And I had a wonderful time. But then triathlon didn't really, I vaguely in the back of my mind, I knew I could swim quite far. I could swim 5K in the pool. It took me 2 hours, but I could do it. And I knew that I could cycle 100 miles. And there was this thought in the back of my head that was like, Oh, that sounds a bit like an Ironman. I didn't even know what a triathlon was. I knew what an Ironman was. I didn't know what a triathlon was. How mental was that? And I thought, oh, wouldn't it be really cool if only I could run? Because that's really hard. If I could run, then maybe I could do all three together. And I stole my sister's, she doesn't know this, I stole my sister's running shoes. And I went out for a run in them, and I went around the park, and I got back and I was like, no, that's way too hard. I can't do that. No one can do that. It's mental. And all my friends would be like, oh, I just went for a run this afternoon. I was like, how? How do you just run? I don't understand. Like, it hurts and it's horrible and you breathe all weird. And I don't know, the monotony of swimming in a lane for 2 hours is completely normal to me. But for some reason, going out and running was impossible. And so it was in the back of my mind, like, if only you could do this running, it would be, you could do this amazing thing that's epic. And I don't know why, it was like a bit of a jump. And so I did the Couch to 5K, didn't get on with it, gave up after 2 weeks. And I just took a break from it. And then I thought, no, this is what you really want to do eventually. It would be an amazing thing to do. So I did a few runs, and I just signed up for the Bournemouth Marathon, and thought, there we go, I've got a thing I have to achieve. It's a bit of a jump from not running at all to just doing a marathon. I thought, no, I'm gonna get there. And I'd go out and I downloaded a training plan and I followed it, but I didn't quite follow it the right way. I just skipped all the tempo bit. I was like, I don't know what that is. I'll just do a 4-mile run. It'll be fine. And obviously that was the wrong way to go. And it was harder because I created all these issues for myself. I had these epic blisters that went on for ages, and it was not efficient way of training. And when I came to it, I was so nervous about the marathon. I remember feeling sick the day before because I thought, what if I can't do it? But I got through it all, and the marathon was really hard, and I couldn't sit down for 2 days afterwards. But I did it, and I thought, there's no way I can do an Ironman. That was like that, and 100 mile or further on a bike, and then swimming. That's epic. That's just crazy. And I didn't run for a year after that.
Really? A whole year?
Yeah. Well, I didn't go out for... I just didn't plan anything. I just thought, no, I can't. I need to take a step back. And I remember my husband saying to me the day that I got back to the hotel from the run, and he said, oh, so you're going to do it again? I was like, don't talk to me. Don't even ask me. Because I can't bear the thought of doing something and then giving up just because it was hard. So I felt like I needed to do it again, but the fact that it was so painful and I knew I had to do it again was a bit traumatic after that. So I signed up for another one. And I was like, yeah, I've got to do it. So I signed up for Brighton the following year. I suppose that wasn't a year. It was like, it felt like a year off of running, but it wasn't. And at that time, I took up a new hobby, which was LARPing.
LARPing. For people who don't know what that is, tell people what LARP stands for.
It stands for live action role play.
Okay.
It's possibly the geekiest thing you've ever heard of.
I love geeks. Come on, geek us out. Tell us what LARPers do then. How do you spend your weekends?
So LARPing is, it's kind of like Dungeons and Dragons mixed with cosplay, dressing up in costumes and stuff. So the kind of LARPing that I do is called Festival LARP. So I do an event called Empire, and it runs 4 times a year at the weekend, and you create a character and you dress up in the costume depending on the vibe of what nation you're supposed to be from or what your character does for a living. Are they a magical person? Are they, I don't know, an artisan? Do they create things? You know, are they a politician? You know, all sorts of things. And you create this character and you turn up and you bring your tent and you camp in character, and it's kind of a bit medieval. And
sounds a bit like Game of Thrones, yeah.
It is like Game of Thrones. I mean, I've never watched Game of Thrones, but it is just like that.
No, me either, actually. I've seen one episode.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you wander around and roll dice, and if it's a 6, you use your sword on somebody, and if it's a 4, you sell them a piece of bread and things like that.
it's more spontaneous than that.
Right,
So
okay.
you turn up and you interact, you're in character all the time. So whenever someone talks to you, you are in your character. So you have to answer as your character would answer. And everything that you do in the game is a follow-on. There's reasons and there's reactions that happen because you've created them. And in particular, I mean, at the first time I went, I will admit, I was so, what is this? These people are crazy. They're talking to me like, forsooth. No, it's not quite that bad. But you know what I mean? Like it's on another level. And you feel like a fraud because you're pretending to be this person and you're not. And my character is a warrior. So she fights in battle. And we have 2 battles, one on a Saturday and one on a Sunday. And they're fully, they're planned out by a military council. You go to military council, you find out who you're fighting, these barbarians invading our lands. We have a mission. We have to go and find this general and overtake him, or we have to find this magical item. And there'll be different nations fighting. So you fight as your nation fights. So,
and how many people go to these things?
2,000 people.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah. So
2,000 people.
Yeah. So on the battle, you're fighting with your sword and it's real. So when you have someone in front of you with a sword, it's quite terrifying. You know, the adrenaline takes in and you hit them with the sword and they have to react as if they've been hit. And I mean, you pull your blows, you wouldn't hit them too hard. But if you get hit too many times, you wear armor and that helps your character to stay alive. But if you get hit too many times, then you go down and you have to pretend that you're injured. And then you have to wait for someone to come and either heal you or rescue you or whatever.
All right, so how does this lead into doing a triathlon? You're running around with a sword and being a warrior. I can see you being a warrior, definitely. I do, but how does this lead into triathlon?
So when I started laughing, the first time that I went, I met a lady called Kate, and she was also a warrior, and we got on really well. We're in the same group. And I told her that, I did the Ride 100 and I've been running. And she said, oh, you should do triathlon. And I was like, what's that? And she was like, well, it's like the swimming and the running and the cycling, but you do it all together. And I was like, oh, right, like an Ironman. And she said, yes, like Ironman, but, the whole thing is a triathlon. And I was like, oh, right, okay. And then I said, I'd like to do an Ironman. She was like, oh, really? And I said, yeah. And she was like, well, you better do a triathlon then. And I said, yeah, probably. And we, in our LARP group, or her LARP group, there were a few people who were really excited to give it a go, but they weren't necessarily runners if they were swimmers. So they did a relay and they'd planned to do the Leeds triathlon. And so they said, oh, do you want to do it as well? And I was like, yeah, I'll sign up for the whole thing. Why not? So I signed up and my friend Kate did the whole distance and I did the whole distance. But there was this group of LARPers who all did the relay together. And it was just a bit of fun because it was like, oh, yeah, we're going to be, doing the triathlon in our characters. What would our characters do? They're braver than us. Let's go and give it a go. And I absolutely loved it. It was amazing. Yeah, great time. Had a great time.
I like the idea of what would my character do? My character's braver than me. My character would go and do this and be brave. There's possibly something that we can all take away from that. Thinking yourself into another personality who feels a bit braver than you do right now. Is that something you can access, do you think, once
definitely.
Once you've role played?
Yeah, I think also certainly in the last 2 years when I really got into triathlon and I suddenly realized that even with work, because I work in costume and you get offered a job and you're terrified because you might not have worked with that person before and you don't know if they think your work's any good and you don't know what kind of work you're going to be doing or how hours you're going to be doing, and it's quite scary and you just have to go for it, otherwise you won't go anywhere. So you just have to pretend to be a braver person than you are. And I definitely think that, doing that with triathlon, like I'm scared to swim in open water. I should do it then. Or I'm scared to do a half distance. Oh, well, I should do it then. And then when you've done it and you realize that fear that, oh, I can do that has gone, then, but it hurt. Well, maybe I could do it and it doesn't hurt. Or maybe I can do it and I enjoy it more because I know that I can do it now. and that feels great. You just got to keep going.
I love that. My mentor when I was a kid, Moose, used to say you've got to do something every year that scares you. Like pick an event that scares you and go and like work out how to do it and why it scares you and do it anyway. Yeah, I love that. So you mentioned there that you work in costume. Tell us a bit more about your day job, because this is going to feed into the idea of how in God's name do we fit half distance, full distance training in around a crazy job. So what do you actually do for a living?
So I am a costume maker for, at the moment, film. Like feature films, mainly big ones, but I have done in the past theatre, opera, ballet. I think I did a bit of TV once. So yeah, It's quite a variety, but it's mainly costume making, and I mostly do menswear, but I do lots of other things too.
Okay, so what would you are you allowed to say, or is it secret? Are you allowed to talk about what you've made?
I can't tell you what I'm working on now, but I can tell you what I have worked on.
Yes, there you go. Go on.
I suppose the recent thing that came out was Ammonite, which was a really small film festival type film based on Mary Anning. That came out. That was a period piece. So that was a lot. It was with Kate Winslet and Saoirse Ronan, and that was beautiful period costumes, which is quite different to other things I have done. I've worked on Justice League.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I made. It's the thing with costume is it's a real collaborative process. So you work in a team. So I can't really say, oh yeah, I made that costume, because that costume was probably made by 8 people. Each different aspect of it was put together. But yeah, I worked mainly on Aquaman and the Flash, and we make sort of the under suits, like the lycra suits.
Oh yeah.
It's quite fascinating because you wouldn't believe how much effort goes into one costume. It's on another level.
Yeah, I can definitely believe it, but that's amazing. I've got a nearly 9-year-old son who will just fall over backwards when I tell him that another person who's designed the Flash's suit.
I didn't design it. I made
it. There you go.
Yeah, no, design is like a completely different aspect of it, but it's just the amount of detail is amazing. The designer will give us the design, and then there's a costume cutter who will interpret that design and create the pattern and the way it's going to be made, and then it gets given to the costume makers, so what I do, and then I have to put it together, like put the pieces together to create what it's going to be.
Wow.
And, yeah, it's good. I've worked on Assassin's Creed.
Yeah,
that was a really fun one. That was crazy. Cats. Everyone loved cats, right?
Oh yeah, that was hey, well, the costume's got a good write-up, so
yeah. I did The Favourite.
I don't know that one.
That one, I think it won an Oscar last year.
I'm showing my ignorance here. Won an Oscar for best costume.
Yeah. And the last Fantastic Beasts, Crimes of Grindelwald, that was a good one. It was nice and magical, and yeah, it was really good because at the end they give you a wand. So I have a proper... Really?
Have you got your own like Harry Potter type wand?
My own Harry Potter wand. Weird. The box has my name on it and everything.
Oh, that's amazing.
I know.
Wait till I tell my son.
It's my prized possession.
I bet, yeah.
I'll take it LARPing though, can I?
So how long, what are your work hours like then? I'd imagine it's not exactly 9 to 5 doing a job like this. How does it work? And certainly how does it work in the time of coronavirus?
So the hours are quite long. So usually they start from 8. They can go between finishing 6 or 8, depending. So it can be quite a long day.
Yeah.
And to get to each studio can be quite a long time. So it's about an hour drive to the studio I'm at now. And so yeah, it's a long day. And occasionally you might have to work quite a long day because, you know, they need something on set the next day that hasn't been fully made yet, or the schedule has changed. So you need to be prepared for mentally, I think, more than anything, that, you know, things can change at 6 o'clock when you want to go home. Oh wait, I have to do this now. So there's been a few crazy times, but it's always good fun. But yeah.
And then how do you fit that in? How do you fit training in around that then? Because it sounds like a business end of a 12 to 14 hour day pretty regularly. How do you then go about fitting in your training for half or full distance?
So at first it was an adjustment, but I trained myself to be, I think, so because in the coaching club, we have the key session tracker, and that has changed my life. Because before I was like, oh, I don't feel like going to the pool tonight. I just can't be bothered, or I'm really tired. But am I tired, or am I just can't be bothered? Or I can't be bothered to go for a run. But because of the key sessions that I have to do, that this is the bare minimum of what you have to do in the week. I'm like, okay, so if that is my bare minimum, I can achieve that. And so I just find a way to get on that bike at the end of the day. I'm like, no, you have to do it. So usually when I get home, I go straight onto the bike, and that has helped. Before, I would sit for about an hour and feel sorry for myself and be like, oh, I don't want to do it. And my husband would say, oh, you don't have to. And I'm like, no, I don't. And then I'd sit there and be like, no, I'm not going to do it. And then 5 minutes later, I'd always get up and get on the bike. So it's just that I have to have my little meltdown first before I go on.
I think so many people do that. And I think the more people talk about the fact that that's the process, I think we tend to assume that everyone else finds it easy apart from me. Everyone else comes in, they've had an easy day, and the training just comes. Even the penny drop moment for me was talking to Dave Scott, whenever it was, a month ago or so, and him saying, oh yeah, I used to just sit there and not want to do anything and just couldn't get my training. And you think, what? Right, okay. If it even affects Dave Scott, it affects every human being on the planet. This is just our process we have to go through. And I think that's so important to go, that's how we're wired. We just have to find a game to play that wins that game in favor of getting on the training rather than not.
Yeah. I think also, I feel like when I sit there and I moan that I don't want to do it, I kind of feel, oh, you sound ridiculous. Just go and do it. It's okay. It's an hour. What's an hour? We'll be fine. And I mean, there have been times, especially in lockdown, when it was really tough, and just to motivate yourself. And I'd leave my training till really late. And I'm more of an evening person. I don't understand these people who get up in the morning at like 5 and go for a run. What is that? So I like to leave it till there was one day where it was like 9 o'clock and I knew I had to do a run for, I think it was like a virtual challenge or something, and I had to do it before midnight. I was like, oh, it's 9 o'clock, I can't be bothered. And I thought, oh, well, I'll go out for half an hour and see how I feel. And I ended up doing like 13 miles, which was ridiculous. Like,
yeah,
mental, but I enjoyed it. Yeah. I had a great time, and I was like, oh yeah, no, I can do it. And the more you do that, the more you realise you can do it. It's fine. Yeah,
I think often getting the training done, it's just a matter of habit, isn't it? It's just a matter of remembering, almost like muscle memory, but mind memory. Your mind goes, oh, it's just what I do every day when I'm tired and fed up and grumpy. I'm just going to train anyway. And that becomes part of the process.
I also find not looking at what you have to do helps as well. Like just leaving it a little secret until the end of the day when you're like, all right, I'm going to go now. And you've got your running shoes on. You're looking like, oh my goodness, I have to run. Okay, fine, I'll just do it.
And tell everyone what your streak is at the minute. How many consecutive weeks have you hit all the key sessions for now?
I think it's 40. I don't know. Is it 42 or 45?
Oh, I was counting on you knowing. It was one or the other. Well, it must be nearly 45 because it was 42 the other day. I had it in my notes because I think I mentioned it on the show. I think it was 42 when I mentioned it. So, yeah, it must be 45, mustn't it?
Yeah. Hopefully 46 this week after today.
If you can make it for the full year, that would be...
I've thrown down the gauntlet now. It has to happen. It's got to happen.
And there's 2 of you left standing, aren't there?
I think, yeah. And I've got to get the ladies to be like, yes, go girls. It's been really brilliant. Good. And I had no idea that, because when I started doing it, when I signed up, I thought, oh, I've got to really take this seriously. If I'm going to go full, I have to really knuckle down and do the correct training and not just go, oh, I'll ignore the tempo bit and do the distance. I've got to actually do something specific. And so when the key session thing came out, I was like, right, I'm going to hit it every week, and then I know that I have the best chance of getting around that course when I go to Austria. And then I didn't realise that. I was like, oh yeah, I'm feeling really good. And I looked, and when you said I'd done a streak of, I think it was 38 weeks when it was mentioned, I'm like, oh yeah, great. And then I was like, oh, was that unusual? Yeah. Great.
Yeah, it definitely is, especially over lockdown. I mean, it was much, much harder for people to get stuff done during lockdown, and you just kept on trucking, which is amazing.
I even got a message from Boris on Strava.
A threatening message from Boris? Really?
Yeah. I who knows if it was the real one or not. I don't know why he was on Strava. I think he said a run a day keeps the corona away. So,
is that right?
Apparently so.
He would know, right? He would know.
He would know.
Yeah. And so the triathlon journey so far, then, the big goal is still Austria.
Yes.
Now it's going to be into next year, isn't it? That got kind of nixed this year.
Yeah, I think it was so close before it got cancelled as well. I think it was like 6 weeks, and I was at the peak of the hard part of the training. I feel it was really gearing up, and I was like, 15 hours a week or something crazy like that. And I was like, yeah, it's great. We're going to smash this. Oh no, we're not.
Yeah, you're really in that sort of 4-week block where you hit some volume, and to get it pulled after that's heartbreaking, I think.
But, I loved the training. I think I've realised now that I know a lot of people live for the actual race, but I really live for the training and having that regular structure. And it was a real pleasure to be able to say, oh, I've got a 5-hour ride this weekend. Oh, where am I going to go? Where am I going to explore? Oh, let's have a look at the Surrey Hills down this direction, or let's go up to Berkshire, or let's go here. And that was kind of an adventure in itself. And what would I be doing otherwise? I'd be sitting at home, and with the lockdown, you can't go anywhere anyway. You can't go visit a town or anything. So this is a way of really having a bit of an adventure.
Yeah.
And also my friends, I was really lucky that I had friends who were also training for the same race. So, and I'd never trained with another person before. I've always done it on my own. And I've realised now that it's the best thing to socialise with someone, to have someone on a ride with you who you can just be like, oh yeah, this is great. Oh, we're having fun. Oh no, a hill. That sort of thing.
Outlaw X, then. Fortunately, you did manage to get a race in at the end of the season.
Yeah, I was so chuffed to get a race in.
How was your experience at that one? Because for people who don't know, there were a few logistical and meteorological challenges thrown at the event organisers at the last minute, weren't there?
They did so well. Well. I had a blast of a race. It was great. I did the same race last year. And so I kind of knew what it would feel like in a way, what the course was like and stuff. But you easily forget, don't you? As soon as you're off it and you've got that medal, like, oh yeah, it was great, fine. But this time I just felt far more positive and chilled. Like, it's almost like having the lockdown this year really alleviated any pressure there was to achieve anything. Just go out there and enjoy it. And having the teammates around me was the best feeling. I was buzzing, like going to transition and setting up my bike and seeing other OA people. I was like, hi, and it was great. It was really, really great. The actual race, I was so nervous about the swim because I didn't see when I went to bed that they changed the swim. And so I slept like a log. I didn't think about it at all. And when I woke up, I was like, oh, the swim's been cut. It's 750 meters. A part of me was like, yes. But a part of me was like, oh, that's a shame. I won't have the full distance to compare my time to last year. And I feel like that was a little bit, but the new way of entering the water was, in a way, I thought better, because for Outlaw X this year, instead of it being like the mass swim start, they had people going down a ramp and running and jumping off, and that was epic.
Yeah,
and there were people doing flips and dives. And I thought, I haven't dived in the water since I was about 10. I don't even know how to dive. And I wear like the most inappropriate goggles ever, because everyone's got these like fancy, flashy, like goggles that are tiny and they look amazing, and they're like putting them under their hats so when they dive in they don't go off. And I've got like NHS prescription goggles that are huge. They take up like, they're not prescription, but they might as well be. They take up a third of my face. They're huge. And I thought, oh wow, no, I can't do that. I'm just going to jump in really delicately. Well, I plopped in like, I don't know, and the goggles shot off my head and I couldn't get them back on. So every like stroke I was slapping my face to get the suction on the goggle back on, panicking. And but the swim was, yeah, it was good, but not what I was expecting. So I think I need to learn to dive and maybe wear proper goggles. That would be good.
Well, it looked like almost nobody that I saw on the video knew how to do a decent dive anyway. So the hard thing is managing to get in without the goggles coming off, isn't it? It's something that, you're right, it's something that if you didn't swim as a kid, if you didn't do like swimming galas and learn to dive in off the edge, you can't dive in without your goggles coming off around your neck or filling with water, or it's like a dark art. So
dark art.
I think,
yeah, I love that.
I think we're better like putting our hands over our eyes like scuba divers and rolling backwards in off the dock and doing it that way. And then at least you don't lose your goggles as you go in.
In hindsight, that would have been a sensible thing to do, which I didn't think of at the time. I just jumped in. But yeah, I'll have to work on that, I think. It was good.
So looking forward to Austria next year then. Having completed the main block of the training this year, how are your thoughts and your confidence about getting through it? So
this year, having because of being in lockdown and not being able to work in costume, it did give me more of an opportunity to spread out the sessions, the key sessions, and I felt more confident that I could do them. But looking at work, it's going to be a real challenge having the motivation to do the longer rides at the weekend when you're mentally exhausted from the week. But I think this year's just been mentally exhausting anyway, hasn't it? So maybe I'm worrying too much about it, and just I think I can't worry about it and just go for it and do what I can. I'm hoping for work next year around then. I don't know if I'll be working, I don't know if I won't, that sort of joy of the industry. I think, but now that I have done it, have got through most of that block, I know what it's going to feel like, and I know what's required. Like, oh, you can't stop for a cake. Okay, I won't stop for a cake. It's fine. I'll get over that. I felt like such a horrible person when my friends would come on a ride and be like, oh, can I go for a ride with you? I'm like, yeah. Can we just not stop? And can we do it at this pace? And do you mind if we go here? So there's some hills. And they're like, oh, it's very specific going on a ride with you. I'm not sure I want to.
Maybe you have to let yourself off the leash once a month and allow yourself to stop for cake. Maybe that's the concession that we make to the pandemic and helping relieve mental stress. Maybe that's your prize for a 52-week streak of key training completed. You get to stop.
Finally, I can have that cake.
Finally,
we used to go at the end. Like, we'll go to the cafe at the end, and then it's a good compromise.
Yeah, I love that. All right, so if you could give a piece of advice to a younger Jess, to a Jess from 4 or 5 years ago who was still contemplating borrowing a pair of running shoes, what piece of advice would you give to younger Jess?
I'd say definitely don't take yourself too seriously. Just have a laugh. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be the fastest person. If you're smiling, everyone's impressed. It's fine.
It does definitely feel like if people laugh and smile and wave and say hello on the way around, it does lighten the mood somewhat, doesn't it? And
it's so good. And also all those volunteers that give up their time to stand and watch people run past them and be grumpy. And I feel if I was a volunteer watching lots of grumpy faces, I'd be like, oh no, someone give me a smile, please. So it's quite refreshing.
Oh, great. So if people see you at races, Jess, brightly coloured tri-suit, pink hair. Who knows? By this time next year, it might be different coloured hair, mustn't it? But
blue, it could be anything.
little elbow bump as they go by, and a bit of happiness Watts high five.
Oh, definitely! Shout unicorn!
All right, brilliant. Well, listen, that's a pretty good place to leave it, I think. Thanks very much for sharing your story with us, Jess.
Oh, thanks for having me.
We'll talk to you again soon. Cheers.
Often. See you. Bye.
All right, that's our interview this week with Jessie Hassell. And I'm really hopeful that there's somebody out there listening, even if it's just one person, who's sitting there and listening to Jessie's story and thinking, that was me. I tried the Couch to 5K and I didn't make it. I hate running, and running really hurts. I've always wanted to do a triathlon, or who knows, I've always really wanted to do an Ironman, but I can't run, or I can't bike, or I can't swim even. I really hope that's given you the inspiration to listen to what Jess has done, how she's taken 2, 3, 4, 5 years and bit by bit moved forward through those stages to get to the point where, she's really comfortably completing a 70.3 distance race now. She's going to go nail her Ironman out in Austria next year, no question. She's really loving the training and she's dedicated to the weekly process of getting the training done. That's what really matters. Getting people to do something that they really want to do and getting them to overcome the hurdles that are stopping them from doing that. So if that's you, if you're sitting there and wondering whether you can do it, maybe listen back to Jessie's story again and have another crack at it, because I love nothing more than hearing stories of people who've overcome those hurdles and managed to do the thing that they perhaps didn't think that they could do. Okay, and that leads us nicely into talking about winter training on Coach's Couch this week. So I've been talking the last couple of weeks about winter training and how I would have you structure if you were training with us. I'm going to concentrate on the bike this week and talk about how we're going to approach bike training within Team Oxygenaddict over the winter time. And the principle of this is based on a couple of things. You're probably not going to have very much time to get outside and ride, if any time at all, certainly not very much in daylight. And so traditional training where you do lots of long, slow miles on the bike in the winter is going to be very challenging for most people. So if you got loads of time, that's fine. But if you haven't, I think there's a more effective way to spend the 2 or 3 hours you might have for bike training every week than going long and slow during that time during the winter. So what we're going to have you do is structure 2 structured interval sessions a week. And we're going to have 1 longer ride, ideally outdoors, but if not, that's okay. We'll talk about that later. We'll talk about a way to structure it for the turbo as well. First thing to state is, it is not cheating in any way to be on the turbo trainer. It's not easier. It's not a waste of time. It's a long outdated thought that not going outside for a ride isn't really training, okay? And I think, when we started this show 5-6 years ago, I really had to sell that idea to people that it's not cheating to not go outside in the wintertime. There's a massive wealth of indoor training stuff these days with, smart trainers and Zwift and Trainer Road and all of that make it fantastic to be inside. So I don't need to sell that idea to you. What I might need to sell the idea to people of is there's a better way to train in winter rather than just doing base miles. What we're going to do is we're going to spend the winter making you a more powerful and stronger bike rider. We're going to raise your functional threshold power so that when it comes time to ride outdoors in the springtime, because your engine is bigger, by the time you get to train outside again, you're going to be going faster for the same effort across any distance. And it's tempting to think, well, I'm going to lose my ability to ride outdoors. I'm going to lose my endurance. That's not been my experience as either an athlete or a coach. Even if you're only doing relatively short rides in your longer rides at the weekend, even if they're only 90 minutes on the turbo most weekends, you are not going to lose that endurance. It's not endurance that's the first thing to go. It's actually your power. I don't want to say top end because that's going to give you the wrong idea, but it's your sort of sustainable time trialing specific power that goes if you don't use it. So that's what we're going to have you do. If you've got a power meter, we're going to be having you train at about 100% of your functional threshold power. If you've not got a power meter, you're going to be training at your functional threshold heart rate. These days, anybody can get onto Zwift. If you've got a smart trainer, it's dead easy and you can measure it using the power meter in your smart turbo. If you've got an old turbo, you can use Zwift's Z power, the virtual power function, and that'll give you a reading on the screen. As long as you've got like an old school speed meter on your bike, it's going to connect to Zwift and it'll give you a virtual power reading. And that's going to be accurate enough to make sure that you're training at or about the right intensity. The first thing we're going to do is an FTP test, and dead simply, that is just a 20-minute sustained constant effort time trial. So as hard as you can go for 20 minutes. And then in order to work out your FTP, it's just 95% of that. So let's say you managed to put out 200 watts for 20 minutes. 95% of that would be 190 watts, and that's your FTP level. From that point on, the intervals that you're going to do are going to be intervals at 190 watts in this instance, or at 100% of your FTP. It's very important to understand you are not going to get faster results by working harder than 100%. It's not one of those like crazy alpha male, alpha type A personality things where, well, if the coach says do 100%, I'm going to do 110% and get there faster. You're training the wrong energy system if you do that. You're not going to be able to sustain it. And all that's going to happen is you're going to make yourself more tired for no more gain. So I would rather you work at 95% than 101% of FTP. And that's really important to get your head around. You don't have to push harder. There is no more gain in pushing harder. And if I was coaching you personally one-to-one and I saw you were going harder than 100%, I wouldn't be saying well done. I'd be saying please back it back down to the right power target next time. Okay, there's a reason it's the target. That's what we're going to train at. Okay, and then in simple terms, you're going to do 2 interval sessions a week. You can get a great example of what they are by training with us on Zwift on Tuesday nights in the Oxygenaddict Triathlon Power Hour. You can find that in the events listing in Zwift, and I'll talk more about that later. But the 5 top tips for turbo training to make it a bit more manageable for you. The most important thing that you're going to need here is you're going to need an electric fan, a big electric fan in front of you, blowing cold air over your face, over your chest. Ride without a top on. Ladies, ride with like some kind of sports bra. Have that fan blowing across you. If you have to do this in a gym on a static bike with no fan, it's going to be absolutely, utterly miserable for you, I'm afraid. I've actually got 3 fans around my bike, and the cooler you can keep yourself, the more comfortable you're going to be putting this power out. You don't want any extra heat stress because it's going to be hard enough as it is. Okay, so as many good fans as you can afford, 2 or 3 around you, blowing that cool air across. That's dramatically going to reduce the amount of sweat that comes off you, because sweat that evaporates carries away much more heat than sweat that just drips off you. Okay, so if you've got no fan, you are going to sweat more. That's something that a lot of people don't know. The evaporating sweat, I think it takes away heat 4 times more efficiently than sweat that drips off you. So get those fans on you, tip number 1. Tip number 2, you're going to need to replace the liquids that you're using. So water and electrolytes, use a precision hydration to drink, and you should be getting through 1 750ml bottle during that hour-long session at least. Tip number 3, put some chamois cream on before you get on the bike. It's much, much less comfortable sitting in a static position on a turbo trainer. So get some chamois cream on there. It reduces the friction rubbing against you. And if you've never tried chamois cream, it's the best 10 quid you're ever going to spend, because it will just make things so much more comfortable. A lot of our team members are also buying rocker plates for the turbo at the moment. And if you don't know what they are, just go away and look one up. It's going to make it much more comfortable to ride as well. Tip number 4, have 2 towels. Have 1 towel over your handlebars and aero bars that you can sit down and rest your arms on. That'll absorb all the sweat coming off your arms. And have another towel there that you can wipe your face and your upper arms and shoulders and body with. Okay, so 2 towels is a great thing there. And lastly, I found this out the other day. I had one of these little water spray things that I bought for watering the plants with, a little squirty water bottle that sprays out a fine mist. It makes such a difference to be able to spray a fine mist of water across your face and shoulders and then let the fan blow across you. It takes so much more heat away. So that little water spray bottle can make a massive, massive difference to sort of send a little mist of water across your face and shoulders. Yeah, so do you know what? I think that's all the tips for this week for Coach's Couch. I think if you put those into place, you're going to find you much more comfortable and you get the training done. If you do an 8-week block with us, get yourself on Zwift. As we're saying, our power hour ride is usually at 7:15 p.m. UK time on Tuesdays. It's listed in the events listing in Zwift. Today, for some reason, because the clocks went back, and Zwift are based in America. The timing was wrong, and I emailed them, and then it got mixed up and it got moved an hour in the wrong direction. So it actually happened at 5:15. But bizarrely, that must be a better time for people to train, because we had 244 riders on as opposed to about 120 usually. So it was an epic ride. So thank you if you guys managed to join us. There was tons of people there from all over Europe and all over America. So maybe that time works best for them. It was interesting. So yeah, come and join us. Give it a try on these workouts, and I guarantee you'll see an improvement in your functional threshold power over an 8-week block. And if you're interested in finding out more about coaching with Team Oxygen Addicts, I think we've got the most comprehensive triathlon coaching program for busy age groupers, as well as training plan written by me. We've got partnerships with the performance chefs, so all our athletes get meal planners linked to the day of training that they've got. We've got a partnership with Matt Bottrell Bike Fitting, so we get discounts on bike fits with him and seminars on aero positions and his special bike training drills. Partnered with Precision Hydration, so we've got personal hydration calls with their team. And we've also partnered with HRV for training, so all our athletes get HRV guidance and the training plans that says, according to how well they've recovered from the previous day's training, here's how you adapt your training session today based on what your HRV, heart rate variability, says. Now, if you're completely new to HRV, I encourage you to go away and read up about it, because the HRV for Training app makes it super, super easy and clear to understand actually what's going on with your body's recovery. And our athletes are seeing massive gains actually by training less and doing less hard sessions when the body isn't ready for it, which is something you would never have imagined. So yeah, that's really awesome. If you're interested in finding out more, you can book a call with me. There's a link in the show notes. Click on that. You can book a time on my calendar. We can have a no obligation chat and see if you're a good fit for our team. And that pretty much brings us to the end of this week's show. Here are some discount codes and deals for you. Precision Hydration, you can use the code Oxygenaddict15 for 15% off your first electrolyte order. And remember, you can book yourself in for a free call with their hydration experts. There's a link in the show notes there. If you mention you heard of it via the Oxygenaddict Triathlon Podcast, you're entered to win a £50 Precision Hydration bundle. And check out teamoxygenaddict.com if you like the sound of Jess's triathlon journey. I think we're the most comprehensive triathlon coaching program for busy age groupers. Just remember, there's links in the show notes for all of these sponsors, so you don't have to remember them. And until next week, have a great, safe training and racing week. I'm Coach Rob Wilby, and you've been listening to the Oxygenaddict Triathlon Podcast. See ya.